Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Beaver and today we are doing 3 super simple recipes to get us started on our journey in home distillation. Now all the ingredients for these recipes you can go and buy at your local supermarket. So let's quickly pop over to Pa's Beaver and check out what he bought at the supermarket to get these 3 recipes going. Today we are going into the store to pick up some ingredients to do 3 super easy recipes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to need some sugar. Now any simple recipe always starts with a sugar head, so we're not going to be doing a simple sugar wash this time. We are actually going to be adding some flavors. So let's head off to the sugar aisle and see what kind of sugar we can get. So we're at the sugar aisle now. We've got a huge selection of sugar. We're going to go with your standard golden brown sugar and we're going to pick up 10 kgs of it. Now that we have our sugar sorted, let's move on to our first level of flavor. Now what I'm looking for is molasses or something similar to that so we can flavor the wash. So let's walk around and see if we can find some molasses. So we're at the syrups aisle and we're going to be going for this molasses over here. Now that we have picked up our molasses, let's move on to the next flavor, and I think we're going to be going for something fruity. So let's go over to the fruit aisle and see what we can get there. So instead of going for fresh fruit, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking some juice and we're going to be fermenting that. So the options here are apple, berry and orange. I think we're going to go for the berry juice. One very important thing to look at is no added preservatives. So let's grab about 5 liters of that. Okay, so with a molasses rum type of wash and then a fruit wash, it's time to move on to something like a faux whiskey. So what we're going to be grabbing is some corn. Let's go have a look what's available at the cereal aisle and see if we can make something out of that. So now that we're at the cereal aisle, we have a huge selection of cereals that we can grab, but I'm going to be going for cornflakes because they are pre-gelatinized as well as has a little bit of sugar. So we're going to be grabbing a couple of packets of this. We're only going to be making 5-liter batches, but yeah, let's grab a couple of bags. Now that we have the ingredients sorted to do our 3 super simple recipes, it's time to see if we can't get some nutrients that we can add to the washes so we can get them to ferment quite nicely, as well as grab a couple of packets of yeast. Now that we're at the yeast aisle, we can select some baker's yeast, but luckily in South Africa we have brewer's yeast available in store, so I'm going to grab a couple of packets of the brewer's yeast. Okay, so what we're going to be picking up here is some multivitamins and then some zinc, as well as some brewer's yeast, but these are just dead yeast stalls. So we're going to be grabbing all of those, dropping them in the trolley, and then let's go pay. Let's head over to the plastic place and see if we can pick up some 5-liter fermenters that we can quickly jerry rig so we can do these 5 ferments. So yeah, let's go have a look. We're here at the container section. Now all of these jugs are way too big for us to do a 5-liter ferment. I was looking at these ones, but I can't find any indication on them that they're food safe. So yeah, I think we're going to be opting for the good old bucket. So we've got 10-liter buckets here, should be more than enough space to do 5-liter ferments. Now I don't want to just grab the 5-liter buckets that are over there, because we might just run out of headroom if anything wants to bubble up, especially with the cornflakes type of deal. So yeah, we're going to go for the 10-liter buckets. With the buckets in the hand as well as the ingredients in the car, it's time to head back home to the studio and let's go make those 3 super easy recipes to get you started in the hobby of home distilling. Now with Pa's Beaver doing the shopping yesterday, we are now going to be starting with the recipe. To make this easier on ourselves, what I'm going to be doing is the first 2 recipes are going to be sugar head based, and I'm going to start by dissolving my sugars as well as inverting them in this big pot over here, and I'm going to be doing my gravity calculations on the amount of sugar in that recipe according to the amount that I'm going to need for 2 5-liter ferments. Let's get the 2 recipes started. Now, like I said, we're going to take the sugars for both the 5-liter ferments and we are going to invert them together, and then we're just going to divide that up between the 2 recipes. What I would suggest is, if you start with this hobby, grab yourself a Alcocalculator or a calculator of some sort to be able to calculate the amount of sugar you're going to need for your batches. Now, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be taking about 2 kilograms of sugar in about 10 liters of water, and that was according to the Alcocalculator. Now, I will link the calculator that I use down below, making it super simple to do your calculations. So let's quickly get the pot all filled up and get ready to start inverting our sugars. While we are waiting for this pot to get up to a nice rolling boil, let's quickly start by adding the other ingredients into our buckets. So once this hot liquid is ready, we can just add it to the buckets and then continue on finishing up the recipes. For the first recipe, we're going to be doing a molasses. Now, this is a molasses with a little bit of a twist, or a rum with a little bit of a twist. This molasses has some mint in it. Standard store-bought molasses, you saw me buying it, and we're going to be adding 4 of these little jars. Now, these recipes are 5-liter recipes. I'm going to be putting them down in the description box below, so you can scale it up to any size you want, just keeping the ratios roughly the same. So let's start by decanting all of this molasses into this bucket. Now, with our pot at a nice rolling boil, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding some lemon juice in here. Now, you don't have to be very accurate about the amounts. All I'm going to be doing is about 2 squirts of this bottle, or roughly about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now, the acid's going to break down the sugar and invert it and remove some of those harsh sugar flavors that you normally get when you do a sugar head type of recipes. Now, what you're going to do is, after you add your lemon juice into your pot, you're going to leave it for about 20 minutes to boil. That's going to be more than enough time to invert all the sugar. With our sugar water now inverted, it's time to move on with the recipe. So what we're going to do now is we're going to top up these 2 fermenters with the nice hot liquid, as well as dump our cornflakes into our 1 fermenter, leave them to cool down, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So let's quickly divide up the liquid evenly between the 2 buckets, and then we can move on. With both the fermenters now topped up with our sugary liquid, what we're going to do now is bring it up to about 5 liters, and then we're going to let it sit until they cool down so we can pitch our yeast. Now, I'm going to give them a nice little stir so I can get everything incorporated and also get some oxygen into the mix, but we're going to do that again once this has cooled down before we pitch the yeast. But yeah, let's get some cold water into these bad boys. While the other 2 buckets are cooling down, let's quickly get our fruit wash going. Now, we are using fruit juice, so that already has some sugar in it, and we need to test the initial ABV of it, or potential ABV, so we can adjust, so we can get around 10 to 12% ABV in the wash. So when we go to distill it, we have enough sugars that turned into alcohol to actually make it worth our while. So all the recipes we're doing, we're shooting for about 12 to 14% ABV. So let's quickly test the ABV of the fruit juice, adjust it with some sugar so we get to that number that we want. For this, what you're going to need is a hydrometer. Now, this is a hydrometer that measures potential alcohol or dissolved sugars in a mixture. So get yourself one of these. If you don't have one, I'll put a link up here where you can download the scales to make your own hydrometer. So according to the hydrometer reading, we're sitting at around 9% ABV, so we need to bump it with about 3 points. Go to your alcohol calculator, type in the volumes, and you should be able to get to that number. Now, I've done the calculations, and we need to add roughly about 300 grams of sugar to get this ABV to roughly 12%. So let's get the fruit juice in the bucket, add a little bit of sugar, give it a nice stir, and then test the ABV again. Quickly sanitize our spoon because it has been sitting out for a couple of minutes with some sugary water on it. So I'm just going to give it a quick spritz with our no rinse sanitizer, Give this a stir till all the sugar has been dissolved. Now because this is already at room temperature, we can already add the yeast. With both the fermenters now topped up to 5 liters, it's time to add our nutrients. Now once again, these are nutrients that we can buy in store. I know it's not the exact right nutrients, but it is going to assist the yeast to get into a nice healthy fermentation. So first up, let's start with some brewer's yeast. So I'm going to be doing half a tablet into each of these, including half a tablet of the multivitamins as well as the zinc. Now with each of these fermenters down to the temperature that we can pitch our yeast, it's time to pitch our store-bought brewer's yeast. Now this is a 20-gram packet. We're going to divide it up equally between each of these fermenters. Generally you're going for about 1 gram of yeast per liter of water. We're going to divide 20 grams up into these little fermenters. Should be enough yeast. Now don't worry, you can't add too much yeast to this. So if you want to go ahead and add the whole packet to each of them, you're more than welcome to. Now we're going to be dry pitching the yeast. We're not going to rehydrate it in any way. This should make our ferments kick off quite quickly. With our yeast pitched and these fermenters ready to be sealed up, what we're going to do is we're going to give them a nice quick last stir. Then we're just going to fit the lids nice and loose on top of them. We're not going to jam the lids down because we're not going to be using airlocks. The reason why we're not going to use airlocks is as this is fermenting, CO2 is going to be escaping. That is heavier than the air, so it's going to give a nice little surface area of CO2, preventing any of the nasty buggies to come in. So all we want to do is prevent anything from climbing into our fermenters like ants and that. And once we have our lids loosely fit, we're just going to put it off to the side in a nice warm place to allow it to ferment. Now with our lids on, we didn't press them down all the way. We left a little bit of an air gap on each of the sides, allowing the CO2 to escape. Now we're not going to be distilling these ferments in this video. I have ordered a mini still that should be delivered and ready for the next video. So when we are going to be distilling all 3 of these recipes and giving you feedback on the flavors. But yeah, let's get these into a nice warm place and allow them to ferment. If you stuck around this far, thank you very much for watching and have a lacquer day.